introduce you. Oh, it just says recording in progress. All right, we're a little late. Anyway, um, it's my privilege, really an honor to introduce you to Bill C. I've known Bill for 28 years and change. He's a very instrumental part of my sobriety. I've gotten a lot of guidance and direction from him. He sits next to me pretty much every Monday when he's in town and I'm in town, and he's honored me a number of times by taking me with him. He's taken me with him to a number of retreats and book studies, and I get to be the wingman, and it's a pleasure. And I love Bill, and I know you're going to love him too. So join me in welcoming Bill. Thanks.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. That was a sincere introduction. I don't know what to do with that. It isn't usually how we love each other. My sobriety date is March the 27th, 1985. I don't know about you, but I'm very impressed by that. I didn't know I was going to be around here this long. Did you know you were going to be around here as long as you've been here? Did you have any idea that this would be fun? That was the last thing on my mind when I walked into AA, that this is going to be a good time. But God, I've had a lot of fun in Alcoholics Anonymous. And some tragedy and some disappointments and periods of great bliss. And what a journey. The reason I bring Steve with me when we do these retreats and stuff is he actually knows the page numbers, and I need help with that. I've never been able to retain any damn page numbers. I don't know what that's about, but we all have our little blockages, you know. So I'm supposed to talk about the 11th step, and what I'd like to do, I'd much rather talk about the steps and talk about what's going on right now than tell my pathetic drunkalogue. We kind of make funny points about it because we'd like to make it entertaining when it's really just quite pathetic and repetitive, isn't it? You know, our stories. When we get here, we're empty. Most of us are very empty. Some of us have very little social skills whatsoever. And the journey in Alcoholics Anonymous and this spiritual path that we're on is about growing up, isn't it? Because I think we skipped it. I don't know about you, but I was pretty hammered for 20, 22, 23 years, something like that, from age 14 to 15 to 37 years old when I walked in here. And when I walked in here, after a couple of stints in the mental institution and a few jails for stupid, like drunken stupid. You ever been drunken stupid? And they arrest you for just being extremely stupid and very drunk. And I'm not a criminal. I'm too loaded to be any kind of a criminal. I'm a wannabe gangster, and I'm not. And so my life was pathetic. You know, I had personas. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I built a persona, and I became the phony AA guru for a while, you know, and that was sad and pathetic. You know, at 10 years sober, I did an inventory that would have killed a lesser man, because by that time, even if you're around here pretending, you know some stuff. And when you blow up your life in the mid-sobriety, who do you blame then? Who do you blame? Because all of us have a story, don't we? And the story usually includes them. They did this to me. You know, this is why I'm like I am, because of this story, and I have a story. So I walked in here at 37 years old. I had the emotional development of a rather disturbed 16-year-old, and I began the process of growing up later in life. And the chances of doing that and looking good are pretty slim. But two things happened to me when I walked in here that are just pure luck, and I think the first one's the most important. On April of 1985, a month or so after I got out of the recovery place, or just the day I got out, I walked into an AA meeting at the Hermosa Beach Alano Club. It was a meeting called the Gong Show. A lot of people said it wasn't really an AA meeting. I went to it for 20 years. Nicknames are flying around. People are hooting and hollering. They're all dressed up trying to hook up. I didn't know AA was going to be like that. I wasn't expecting you. And I stood in the back of that room because there were no chairs available, and I showed up right on time, and I was in the back of that room. One guy got up to share, and they hooted at him so much he just sat back down. clearly a very loved man in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started laughing. You ever had that belly laugh? It's been a long time since you had one of those. You weren't loaded, you weren't high on anything. Matter of fact, you're nervous, you feel uncomfortable. I don't know anybody. I didn't feel part of because I wasn't. But I heard the music right away. I got the joke right away. And I couldn't have described it like that then, but later on I look back and that's exactly what happened. 39 years later, I get the joke. I hear the music. I've always been able to tap into the energy of Alcoholics Anonymous, sometimes more than others. But being in a room full of people, most of whom are conscious of the fact that their life has been saved, you can feel that, or at least I can. I feel that. I left that night driving home and I said to myself, you know, this may not be so bad. And the second thing that happened is a week or two after that, I asked this guy to help me, and he actually did, which doesn't always happen. I look back and I feel very fortunate. I mean, this guy said several things to me that night outside the Alano Club when I asked him for help. One of the things he said is, I want you to go home and read the doctor's opinion. Make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. I think what the bottom is, we talk about hitting bottom, and God, I've hit bottoms in sobriety. I'm sure many of you have as well. And I think what the bottom is the collapse of the alibi system, right? You know, it's like we have a reason. The alcoholic life seems like the only normal one, and we have a reason for that. It's them, those people. This happened, the trauma, the tragedy of my life. That's why I am the way I am. And for some moment, that alibi collapses, and there's a window of opportunity. And that guy inserted himself in my window, and I didn't argue with him that night. I went home and I did my assignment, which is not me. And I showed up at this stranger's house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and he didn't trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. I thought all of you were doing this. I thought must be a handbook. There must be a guidebook of some sort. And each week I went to this man's house and we read another chapter in the book, and he guided me through the process. It's a very intimate act, that. Sitting alone in a room with somebody and reading the book, turning the pages, and whatever conversation is meant to come up will come up. And we developed a relationship. I've had the same sponsor for 39 years. I should have fired him several times, but he needs me now. I make him look good. You know, I'm his most famous baby. and that man and I have traveled a good part of the world doing workshops and talking at places and retreats. I love the retreats. That's my favorite thing. That's usually what Steve and I do together, is we do retreats, and they're just very special things. And at 6 months sober, I did an inventory. I did a 5th step. And I had one of those experiences we have. And what that experience was, he told me after I got done with that, and I told him the secrets I was never going to tell anybody, when he asked me if there was anything that I should tell him that I wasn't going to tell him, and I told him those things that we think that's who we are, those things. And he said, when you go home today, when you walk in through the front door of your house, think about the guy that walked through that front door 6 months ago compared to the guy that's walking through it today. And I actually did that. I stood on my porch and I thought about that. And what came to me is, my God, it's going to be like this now. Everything had changed. I think that's a spiritual experience, that realization. Aren't most of them aha moments? You know, an understanding that transcends the intellect, a feeling that there's been a shift, that I'm not separate now. Something has happened. 39 years later, that date of March the 27th, 1985 has more significance today than it did then. You know, something outside myself touched me, and the obsession to drink and use was lifted from me and my story right away, and it's never returned. I've had some interesting thoughts from time to time, but never the obsession. And some years ago, I was with a pretty good time, big time Indian guru, and I was very impressed to be with this guy on my spiritual search. You know, an atheist spiritual search is a very interesting search. You know, you're trying to come up with something that makes sense that you can stomach, when really the truth is it's an experience, isn't it? More than a concept. It's an experience. And in AA, we experience it. We're touched. If you're sitting in this room tonight, you've had it. You may not know it, but it's happened, or you wouldn't be here. But I was with this guru, and I'm talking away because that's what I do. I'm a talker, especially when I'm nervous. I just babble away. And this man started laughing at me. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he says, "I love you, alcoholics and drug addicts." I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Well, the rest of them out there are trying to get awakened. You're just trying to figure out what the hell happened. You know, isn't that the journey? Trying to get close to whatever happened. What happened?" And I think understanding what that is the booby prize. The experience is much more value. We waste. What an atheist does is he creates a God and then doesn't believe in it. Right? And sponsors say things like, "Well, I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either." And that's very confusing because I want to argue with you about it. And he didn't want to argue with me. One time he told me, he says, "Bill, we don't need you here. You need us. Resign from the debating society." You know, and I remember leaving his house that day when I thought, this is not therapy. This is something else that I'm involved in. God knows I've been shrunk a lot, you know, and I love the subject matter. It's all about me. And in AA, it really isn't much about us, is it? It's about getting out of us. It's about getting out of self. So it says in our book, before that 11th step quote, I believe it's on page 85. It's in the 10th step. And it says, Steve, I think, isn't that right? It says, our very lives, well, not that. What it says is the only thing that's going to save us and give us a life with some purpose, and keep us sober, is the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So I'm a newcomer in AA. I have a job is to get one of those. Because right, I don't have one. And so if I'm going to maintain it, I have to first get one. And this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time before I get one of those. It also says in that paragraph that we're going to rest on these things called laurels, and that we shouldn't do that. And one of the definitions of a laurel is a past achievement. I didn't have any of those. And as a newcomer, I've got to get some achievements so that later on I can rest on them and find out why that's not a good idea. And this is going to take some time, right? You know, and because it's experiential. I'm not going to intellectually figure this thing out, develop a spiritual condition, and start maintaining it at 30 days sober. That's not going to happen. It certainly has not happened to me. So a while back, I was sitting thinking about what is this spiritual condition thing? Because what is it? What's it made? And do I have one at 35 or 36 years sober? How am I doing in the spiritual category? What's it look like to be me? Well, the very first thing that this man wanted to know from me when I was sitting in his living room that day is whether or not I thought I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. Now, for me, that was an easy answer because I was pooped. I was very ill. I had cirrhosis, and it was a lot worse than I thought it was at the time. As it turned out, 7 years ago, February, I had a liver transplant at 30 years sober. It almost killed me. You know, if I hadn't got sober in 85, I'd have been dead within a couple of years. That is not an exaggeration. I was a lot sicker than I thought I was. I had hepatitis C. They didn't call it that then. They said it was non-A, non-B, and it wasn't that big of a deal. They were wrong about that. And I was grossly overweight, and I was just a mess, and I was very, very tired. I think I was more tired than I was sick. I was just pooped. So it was an easy answer for me to say, yes, I am powerless. And I knew I was going to drink again, and I really didn't want to. But I had no faith in my ability to keep myself sober. I'd never been able to do it before. You know, why would I think it was going to happen now? So I could say to him, honestly, I am powerless. So the very first pillar of spiritual condition is powerlessness. Now, whatever mystical path you go down, whatever religious path, they all talk about this, all of them. Doesn't matter from what discipline it comes from. They all talk about personal powerless, that we are not running the show. I am not in charge. I am not the author of my life. It's just unfolding in front of me, and I can't see that, but I'm powerless. So at 39 years sober, I'm pretty sure it's everything. Don't you think? I've yet to find anything I have any power over. I think they took it easy on us and just said drugs and alcohol so we wouldn't run screaming down the street, right? And I talk to you incessantly about how if you were a little bit different, the two of us would be a hell of a lot happier. And you insist upon living your own life, and it pisses me off at my core. So I'm powerless over you. I've lost complete control over the geopolitical situation in the world. Look at it. Nobody from Washington, D.C. has ever called me up and said, what do you think we should do now, Bill? You know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I shut the TV off. I was not emotionally stable enough to deal with it. Doesn't matter what side you're on. It's just nuts. And I don't live there. I live here with you. This is where I live. And I have no power over you either, but God knows I've tried. You know, you ever tried to beat sobriety into a sponsee? It's like, you know, this doesn't work like that, you know? So I'm powerless. I'm utterly powerless. We talk a lot here about acceptance. If we really understood how fully powerless we are, acceptance just happens. You know, but we don't think we're powerless. And I am a self-reliance guy, and it has failed me, and I have no faith. And here I sit. If I can get the powerless thing, just the drugs and alcohol, the second step becomes operational. I need to align myself with a power. Well, what power? Some people will tell you here that you have to have a God in order to do AA. No, you don't. All you need to know about God is it's not you. You know, I like that line. It's not me. I am not in charge, and I'm powerless. Therefore, life is just unfolding right in front of me. The best I can hope for is enough self-awareness to take advantage of what's being offered. And hopefully I've achieved some of that. It seems easier today. There's a lot less chaos in my life today. But for a long time in AA, there was a lot of chaos. I'm an arguer. I'm arrogant. I'm pompous. I'm aggressive. I'm big. And it took a long time to drain that off of me. And when I have a slip, usually it's in those categories, you know. And this is kind of my nature, but it's gotten a lot better. So the second step is simple, you know, something else is running the show. So the third step then comes, and the third step says that I'm going to make a decision to turn my life and will over to clearly what already has it anyway. I think it was nice of them to lead us to believe that we actually have some say in the matter. Well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy? And we have long-winded discussions about the difference between my will and God's will, as if that's possible. My little ego loves the idea of having a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. And what is God's will? Well, if you're wondering about that, I'm going to give you the answer. It may be worth showing up to this meeting. God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? And I don't like what's happening right now. I'm looking for an alternative, and there is none. This is it. This is what we get. It looks just like this. And I have trouble with the way this is. What life and will are we turning over in this third step? It's the inventory, isn't it? What I bring to you, a life with seeming power, I bring to you resentment, fears, and I just think I'm angry. I don't even know that I'm afraid. That comes later, many years. You realize all that anger is just based in fear. And broken sexual relationships, that's what I bring to you. So I write that out, and I share it with this stranger, right? This guy that I hardly know for some odd reason. Isn't that interesting that we do that? You know, I don't think that comes from us. I think that's a gift that we get for some reason, if we do it. You lose a lot of people at the inventory time, right? And I shared this with him. And what's the principle? What do we learn in that inventory process? It's the second pillar of spiritual condition. I have to stop blaming other people and institutions for my problems. High school is over. It's time for little Bill to take responsibility for his own life. It's time to grow up now. Stop the whining. And this is going to take a while, you know. I mean, this is just the introduction because this is ingrained in my personality. On my first inventory was the entire federal government and specifically the Department of Motor Vehicles. Who the hell are they to tell me whether I can drive or not? 14 years sober, I'm screaming at cops on the side of the road. They have no right to insert themselves into my life. This takes a long time. At 8 or 9 years sober, I got escorted off a soccer field full of 9-year-olds for going after the referee. He made a bad call. He needed to be straightened out. And I'll tell you, when you're that sober that long and they're escorting you off the field, your coach and some of the players and the parents are escorting you out, you know you screwed up again. I have rage. Now, what'll cure that is when you walk back out on that field sometime later, because they don't want to see you that day. And you have to apologize to the parents and to your own children who are on the team for your behavior. After a while, you'll cut that shit out, you know, because the amends process is really painful. I mean, talk about humility. I mean, the end result of humiliation is humility, you know, and that has happened to me many times over the years. Now you want me to make amends to these people I resent and hate in order to rid myself of these resentments that I have. And I do not want to do this. It scares the hell out of me. I just want to move on now and forget. One of the great innovations that AA got from the Oxford group is the amends process. Not just confession, but amends. Going back and cleaning up the past. Steve talks about this sometimes. He talks about people that come to him and say, I can't meditate. My mind's too busy. Well, have you made the amends? Have you ever asked that to somebody and they say, I'm making living amends? You know what that means? No, I haven't made the amends. Right? Do we make living amends? Yes. After we make the amends, then we attempt to change the behavior. Right? And what's the lesson in the amends process? When I go to somebody that I don't ever want to see again and I say the words that need to be said, when I turn and walk away from that experience, I am changed right then and there. No waiting. This is a cathartic experience. The action of doing that will change who I am. It will change the story I've been telling. I've given people motivations they probably didn't have. People are just doing what they do, and I happen to be in the blast radius of their behavior. They're not focused on me. They're just doing what they do. And sometimes you're in my blast radius. I'm not really focused on you. You're just the next victim in line. It's not personal. That's the third pillar of spiritual condition. Nothing is personal. And when those first three come together, powerlessness, no more blaming, and I'm working on it, I'm trying, but I'm having many slips. And then I begin to realize that nothing's personal and this story I've been telling hasn't been accurate. That is the collapse of the egoic structure of who I think I am. This is not necessarily a happy moment. What am I going to replace this with when you begin to see that? And I can tell you that self-awareness without humor is depression. You know, there comes a time in this spiritual path where you stand there and you say to yourself, oh my God, it's me. It was never them. It's me. That's not a happy. And Alcoholics Anonymous does a really good job at helping us laugh at who we think we are, not who we really are, because we haven't become that yet, but who we think we are, the persona that we put on. I was the phony biker with the clip-on earring. I became the phony AA guru. And when that falls apart and you stand there and you realize what you've done, you go, it's humiliating. I've humiliated myself. The self-awareness is not necessarily a happy thing, you know? And so in the 10th step, the 10th and the 11th step to me are joined at the hip. 1 through 9 is about 10% of the program. It's not the work. It's Sober 101. It's the first semester. It's the work we have to do to develop a message with some depth and weight so we can begin the real work. And the real work is in 10, 11, and 12. It's 90% of the program. It's where we live. All the other steps are incorporated in it. We will continue to do inventory. But in this self-awareness, the fourth pillar is self-awareness, where it's not self-obsession, it's self-awareness where I can watch myself move through life. I can see it. I realize that I'm the problem. Now there's the opportunity for change. What's that look like? Well, my sponsor loves to say, you can't stay sober on 11 and a half steps. Meditation is part of it. It's in the step, you know? And in meditation, my meditation, I'll sit and I focus on the breath going in and out of my nose. And the egoic mind, the thinking mind that carries within it the persona that needs to be protected and defended, because its job is to create separation. I am always the subject. Everything else is an object. I'm not connected to what's around me. I have no clue how bad this is. I'm not capable of intimacy. I'm so wrapped up in myself, I can't feel you in my life. I mean, you're standing there and I need you, and I have arrangements, I don't have relationships. And I don't know this until it begins to become clear. And in meditation, this egoic mind doesn't like being in the present moment, so it wanders away from the breath. And I notice it has wandered away. I wonder what that is that notices that. And I notice that, and I gently bring it back to the breath. This is a game-changing experience. This 20 years sober, this hit me. I started getting sick with liver disease. And I needed some help, and I began to meditate with intent, meaning I'm looking for spiritual help from where, I don't care where. But in and of myself, I can't change my life situation. I can't change this illness. And I started meditating with intent. And I realized that evidently I don't have to go where this thinking mind wants to take me. I'm onto it now. And we talk about it in the third person, don't we? We say my head is out to get me. And we make it adversarial because that's who we are. It needs to be killed, crushed. The ego is bad. No, it's not. It's not the enemy. It thinks it's me. I think it's me. I'm in collusion with it, right? It just takes the past and projects it into the future over and over again. And it doesn't like being in the present moment. There's nothing for it to do there. There's never anything wrong in the present moment. Things are exactly as they are. So it goes into the future or in the past where it can work on stuff. And I notice that and I bring it back. So what I want to do is I want to develop the skill of the watcher. The more I meditate, the better I get at it. Where I'm onto it now. Sometimes the appropriate emotional response is depression. When I realize it's me, that's not a happy moment. Sometimes I'm appropriately depressed at the way I've lived my life and who I think I am. When I realize this and I start exercising that watcher, I asked this guru one time, I said, so who we are is the watcher, right? He goes, no. And I went, well, shit. And he goes, precisely, Bill. It is very difficult. Everything is a trap. I'm looking for answers. I don't know that there are any answers, but there certainly is experience. One time I was walking around the streets here, trying to get healthy again, and it came up with this creepy thought of something I may or may not have done when I was 9 or 10 years old. And I stopped in the middle of the street and I said out loud, really? You want to think about that now? Well, I'm just going to move on. Thank you very much for sharing. I know you're trying to help, but I'm just right here in the street and I looked at the asphalt. This is where I am. I'm not 9 years old anymore. I don't want to relive that over and over and over again. And it still does it, but I'm onto it now. I'm onto it. And we got a game going here. You know, I want to be right where I am. And how often are we exactly where we are? Probably not very often if you really look at it. The final pillar. I mean, all there is the 11th step. If it's true that we can't fix ourselves, and if we're going to be fixed, even if we're going to be fixed, it's not going to come from me, right? It's going to come from something else. It's going to be an experiential change, a transcendent of my own thinking. It would behoove me to pray and meditate. When I pray, the prayer I say is, please help me not make this about me. It's not about me. It's about us. It's not about me. Our first tradition is our common welfare should come first. It doesn't talk much about me. It talks about you. It talks about us. That I am not separate. That one of my guru friends tell me the mistake we make, Bill, is thinking that we're independent of each other, and we are not. That's the stress. That's the struggle. There is a self, but we're not independent of each other. And it's really not even each other. It's all of nature. It's everything. We are part of a much larger whole. We're all carbon units. And the thing that's missing from me, the character defect that I don't know that I have, is compassion, because I've never had compassion. So how would I know that something was missing? And what's the mechanism that Alcoholics Anonymous, the spiritual path of AA, uses to develop compassion in us? Sponsorship. When you enter my life, it disrupts everything. You know, there's action and there's activity. You know, there's activities are great. I love all the activities in AA, but the real action is working with others. Like that man did with me, sitting alone in his living room with me and sharing that book with me and sharing his life with me and bringing me into Alcoholics Anonymous. I begin to exercise the compassion muscle. Now, the first 10 years I was sober, I was trying to make a name for myself in an anonymous organization. That's all I had to work with. It's always ego. It's always Bill. I want to be a rock star, but I just have no talent. But I'm in AA. I might as well run this thing then. And I'm looking for devotees. I'm trying to collect people. You know, I'm going to build my own little empire. And it didn't matter what my motivation was, because what happened by me doing that work is I fell in love with you. You can't not do that. When somebody shares the most important fifth step you'll ever be involved in is the first one you listen to. And you have somebody bare their soul to you, this stranger, like I did to that stranger. And I am never not moved by that. When you enter my life, it disrupts everything. And I fell in love with you. You wanted me at certain points of your life because I was important to you. You wanted me when you were having your babies because I was part of your life. When 1985, when I walked in here, nothing like that was happening. Nobody was interested in anything I had to say. You can tell how spiritual you are if you're surrounded by people that love you, and you can feel and accept that love. And I am surrounded by people that love me. And the reason for that is you have made me lovable. When I got here, I wasn't like that. The reason you love me is because I love you, and it's reciprocated. When I was in that hospital after the surgery, I was in that hospital for 3 months. And you came, Steve Lamb smuggled Popeye's chicken into me in that hospital in there. And the surgeon came in there and saw it. My daughter almost kicked his ass, you know, but was he trying to help me or hurt me? I'm not sure, but that's love. That's love. I wanted Popeye, so he got me what I wanted, you know. He's like a dealer. But there was a moment in that time when people were coming in, and when you're in the liver department at Cedars, they never once asked who you people were. They're used to AA in the liver department, if you can imagine that, you know. That's who's in there, right? So they would just shove you out of the way and do what they had to do. But there was a moment where I felt myself being resistant to this love that was being shown to me. And I've been around long enough to know, what is this, Bill? What is it in you that still is trying to tell you that you don't deserve this or it's not real? And I remember crying in that room and realizing I am loved today. And that's not an ego trip. That's just the reality of my life. You know, there's people that I'm close to, people that I care about, people that I love. And I'm a people guy. I've always been an extrovert. And you're in my life. And my wife is 34 years sober. She sponsors lots of women. We try to keep them separated, given the gene pool. You know, she'll say to me, that guy Steve, is he okay? No, Karen, none of them are okay. Lee, get your girls away from my guys. You know, come on now. You know, it's like, that's our house. That's the house I live in today. And I'll leave you with this thought. I know I've run out of time here. They say here you got to give it away to keep it. No, You have to give it away to even get it. And I believe if we don't do that, if we don't formally sponsor people, I don't know that we ever really learn the compassion. Nothing has changed me more than you in my life. Thank you very much for letting me share with you.
So I want to see hands. Come on, guys, let's put hands up. And while you're doing that, let me just say, number one, the bottom is the collapse of my alibi system. Secrets. I think I'm the things I've done. No, that's not who I am. Understanding is the booby prize. The real prize is the experience. And then I love this one. I have to get a spiritual condition to maintain. I don't come here with one. Like, just so, so beautiful. Thank you for the pillars. Come on, John. Come on in.
I figured I'd get it going for us. My name's John Corboy. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Bill, thank you for such a beautiful share. It was captivating. You know, what I really resonated with me is that being awake enough to recognize when the universe is giving us opportunities. And I'm able to take leaps of faith today. Sometimes my sponsor says sometimes that's the only mode of transportation is a leap of faith. But when I do that today, most of the time I'm calm. And I would love to hear on your journey what it is that you've done to help you find calm and peace in those moments when you are taking those leaps that maybe seem scary to some or scary to us in that moment.
I remember one time I was in the hospital after the transplant, my life got saved. I remember my wife looking at me as I woke up. I was in ICU. And she looked down at me and she said, "You're not going to die." This was really good news. It's like people were coming to say goodbye to me for a long time. That's a weird experience, you know, and you can see it in their eyes. And I was in the hospital one night and I was really, really uncomfortable. I was just, you know, I couldn't move. I had all kinds of stuff hooked up to me and I couldn't roll over. I had shrunk down to like 190 pounds. I lost all my muscle mass. I couldn't stand up out of a chair and I was stuck in that bed and I was just so uncomfortable. I was just whimpering. It just was more uncomfortable than painful, but there was a lot of pain. I had metal stitches all through me. And so I said, man, I need to meditate. I need to meditate. And I got quiet and I breathed and I was meditating. And at one point I burst out laughing because clearly what I was trying to do is change the situation, you know, and that's not possible. What I needed to do and what I did do is relax into what was happening and stop the struggle against it. And isn't that life? Isn't that the present moment? I mean, you're in a tight spot. You can't change the spot. You're going to have to go through with it. And you're struggling against it. You're complaining and about this and that. And what you're expecting, what I'm expecting is I believe that things outside myself need to be different in order for me to be okay. And it just doesn't work like that. And I can remember sitting in that bed and just breathing, just big, deep breaths, get some oxygen to the brain and just relax. And the struggle stopped. I just relaxed into the pain, into the discomfort. Didn't mean it was a happy moment, but struggling against it makes it worse than what it really is. The fear of what might happen is much worse than what's happening. I think that's true throughout life. And on a good day, I try to do that.
Thank you, Bill. Sarah, please come in.
Hi, Alice. Thank you. I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. Bill, thank you for your share. So my question is, you said sometimes I'm properly depressed with my past. Is that right?
Well, sometimes the appropriate emotional response to a
Depression.
situation is depression. I mean, sometimes I'm appropriately depressed, you know. It's like people talk about I suffer from guilt. Well, when I suffer from guilt, it's usually because I'm guilty. And I don't like the feeling of being guilty, you know. You know, if I'm feeling shameful, I know some people talk about I suffer from shame. Well, when I feel shame, it's because I've been shameful. Now, I know that people have, you know, chemical imbalances and the depression. I don't have depression like somebody that really suffers from depression, but certainly sometimes I feel bad or I feel shameful because I have been. And we have a mechanism for that. It's called the amends process. It's like owning it. I have to be responsible for how I feel and how I behave. It says in the book, you know, whenever I'm disturbed, it's always me. That does not mean that the other person is innocent, but I have to own my own emotional state. And if there's retaliation, I have to own that. If I behave badly because I've been wrong, that's on me. I have to be responsible for how I feel. And when that began to really happen for me, there's a lot less chaos in my life. Sometimes people want to come up and argue with me about something, and I just don't. I don't need to engage in that. A friend of ours, Steve and I, Scott Redmond, used to say, he says, I want to help you, but I don't want to be a psychotic participant in what's going on with you. You know, and there are some people that just feed off of negative energy. I try to avoid that. I don't need to engage, and every time I disagree with something, sometimes I just need to be quiet, walk away nicely, smile, and walk away.
Calvin, you're up.
Oh, hello, everybody. My name is Calvin. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. And, you know, I remember the first time I really met you was in Nashville when we was up on top of that mountain that we couldn't get no phone reception. We was high up on a mountain at a retreat you did, and it was a profound retreat. Then you came to the Jersey Shore and you did a retreat, and I had the opportunity to be there with you. And you always carry a strong message. But I wanted to ask you something. You had said at one retreats more so. And you said something about climbing the AA corporate ladder. I always think about that, you know, and you got up there and you found out wasn't nothing there. Could you just expound a little bit on that if you could?
Yeah. Well, it looks like there's a hierarchy, right? And I want to be in that. I want to be in the in crowd. So there's levels of sobriety. Level 1 is when you're just working the steps with your sponsor and you're helping guys. You're just doing regular old plain old AA, you know. Level 2 is when you become a teacher. And then when you're a teacher, you don't have to do the work anymore because now you've transcended the work and you're teaching the work, right? And then level 3 is when you find out there's no goddamn levels, right? And I can tell you, when you get into level 3 and you think you're with some people that are in that level, they're laughing at you because they know you think they're the hierarchy because that's what they thought. And they'll let you in, but they'll laugh at you because you know that. And there comes a time where you realize, oh, hell, I'm full of shit again, you know? I mean, there's only one level. It's just us. There's no hierarchy, you know? Scott Redmond said to me one time, he said, you know, Bill, there's no hierarchy. And I go, yes, there is. And you're part of it. And I'm trying to get close to you. And he just shook his head and walked away from me. But you have to go through that to get to the other side to see the truth of that, you know? Like I'm almost 40 years sober. So that gives me some credibility in AA, right? You know what credibility it gives me? Is that when those guys like me are trying to get in with me, let them in. That's about it. Let them in. You want to get close to me and come out and sit in my backyard, you'll find out how spiritual I really am, you know? And I've had people come and do that and see their face change when they realize, oh, geez, this isn't the guy. It's like, you know, so that's the whole thing behind the hierarchy. It's part of the ego trip that we're all on. Some of us are extroverts like me. Some of us are introverts sitting quietly judging the rest of the room and judging themselves right out of the room. Right? But it's both the same thing. It's the ego trying to run the show. And on the spiritual path, you're kind of forced to save your own life to look past that, to look through it and see what that really is. It's not the enemy, it's part of me, but it's not the essence of my being. There's something deeper within me other than that egoic mind.
Thank you, Bill. What a great answer. Samantha?
Hi, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Samantha, and gosh, what a joy to be here. Thank you so much, Bill, and it's great to see you again, Steve. And I heard also the weekend and see so many familiar faces. really is a blessing. And I loved your share. I loved your humor. I loved your just hitting the truth of the reality of what is. My question, oh gosh, I just relate to so much of what you're saying. For me, it's great when I'm closing the gap of when I start running the show again and I can catch it more quickly. So I was wondering, what are your go-tos, or have you found some really great, like, just things that set you off and realize I'm running my show again, I'm back in the driver's seat?
So recently, I did an inventory, and I have fears. I'm 77 years old. My wife turned 70, and she has a bit of a heart condition, and it just scares the hell out of me. You know, I have old man fears. You know, I'm in pretty good shape actually, but you know, you can't help it when you get older. It's like, this is the end. I'm coming near the end. How do I want to spend that time? But her heart condition really scared me. I do not want to go through the pain of losing that woman. We've been together 30 years. And I look at that and you can't help but notice how self-centered that is. You know, I mean, it's a real fear. It's a real thing, right? But I realize just, you know, getting quiet, realizing what I'm really worried about is I don't want to feel the pain of losing her. And my job is to be there for her, not to be wrapped up in myself. That's when I said that prayer the first time. Please, God, help me not make this about me. My job is to be there for her. So I did an inventory and I wrote down these fears, and I thought, you know, shit, I'm not beyond doing an inventory. It's like, and there are two things that came out of that inventory. One is I really didn't have any resentments. That's interesting, isn't it? So what I wrote down were aspects of my nature that I don't care for, that I wish I was different, which is essentially a resentment. There's something I don't like that I think should be different than it is, and it's not, right? So I wrote down some stuff, and one of these things was about this fear that I had towards my wife. And I shared this with my sponsor. He happened to be in town, and I shared it with some other people. I shared it with Steve. I don't care what anybody knows about me. And I got some healing from that. And one of the things I did is I went up to my wife and I sat on the couch with her and I held her hand and I told her, hey, I love you more than you can imagine. And I told her how afraid I was that I was going to lose her. And she looked at me very sweetly, because she knows me so well. And she said, honey, if you die, I'll be really, really sad. I don't want to lose you either, but I'll be okay. But if I die, you're going to have to find somebody because you're helpless. So sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous, we replace fear with laughter when we realize how silly we are and how self-centered. Doesn't mean it's not real. I mean, I'm not, but there's a perspective change that can happen. And when that happened, it changed my perspective. And I realized, like I was there when I nursed both my parents when they died. That was a sad thing, but they were older and they had cancer and I took care of them. And the whole time I was there, no, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. There's no separation. And in that, it was a very happy time because they could trust their big, strong son to take care of them. And they weren't worried about me anymore. They saw me be sober. They saw my dad was sober 45 years when he died. And I was right there where I'm supposed to be. And that's where I'm supposed to be for my wife. And I need to be there for her, to help her, to be supportive. And whatever happens, I will be okay. And I just don't believe that, do you? I don't really have faith. I don't think I'm going to be taken care of. I want to avoid tragedy. And I'm here to report to you, ladies and gentlemen, life is fucking dangerous. Shit happens, you know, and we have no control over it. And our job is to show up. Not fall down in a fetal position and curl up and cry like a baby and try to make it about us. Quick story. I had a guy that I was sponsoring. His dad was dying and he was very close to his father. And he called me up one time and he said, I don't think I'm going to make it through this. And I said, dude, it's your dad that's going to die. You're going to be fine. And we both laughed because he had made it about himself. And isn't that what we help each other do? Is see the larger picture? To get out of self. This isn't about getting deeper into self. It's about getting out of self and becoming part of a larger whole.
Irina, you have the joy of being our last question for the evening. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Alice. Bill, thank you. Good evening, family. My name is Irina Mazzi. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you. You gave me so many things to think about because I've just been doing some of my own inventory work these days as we're supposed to do, right? And I've come to learn that denial and avoidance are inextricably linked. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I've been questioning my faith because I'm trying to separate my religious faith from the faith I have in Alcoholics Anonymous and things like that. And I was just curious about your thoughts about things like that. When there's that denial and avoidance, okay, I have my new awareness and I'm going to be moving forward from that. But I'm noticing that there's this lack of faith in my higher power, this lack of trust in my higher power. And it took me a long time to realize that. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts would be and as far as how you would perhaps, or just your thoughts in general about moving forward.
Thank you.
So I used to hear early on that people would say they have a personal relationship with a power greater than themselves. And I'm on my little journey, and I'm an old hippie, so I'm getting into Eastern stuff and sitting around with Baba Ram Dass and some really cool people, actually, great storytellers. And I would ask people when I'd hear them say that, can you describe that to me, this personal relationship? And what would usually happen is some guy would get kind of upset about that because he's just repeating something he heard somebody else say. And I get that. I've done that. And then someone else I would ask, and they would try to describe it to me. And you knew they really had something, but it doesn't lend itself to words. They would talk about having a friend or like a father figure or something like that. So I knew there was something going on, but I didn't have that. And what I've come to for myself personally is I think the ego wants to have its own personal relationship with this power, one that's preferably better than yours. And you can see that throughout the world. We're right and they're wrong. God, you wouldn't want to pick the wrong God. You know, that would be a disaster, wouldn't it? And what I've come to is, what if God is impersonal by nature? All there is that. There isn't anything else. There's no God-sized hole in me. I have everything I already need. And what the spiritual path does is subtract everything within me that's stopping me from seeing that it's already here. There's never been anything missing. I'm not in denial. I'm delusional. I don't see that. I can't see that there's no separation. So I don't have this personal thing. It's more impersonal because I think that's what it is. And there are moments, like I described, of being right where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. I believe that's God's will. You know, I think whatever that might be. Is there an entity up there? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing, though. When you get older, you start thinking about heaven. That would be nice. It's like, you know, it's like, so I try to stay out of the concept business and more in the experience business. And when I come up with something I think is really brilliant, it kind of just makes me chuckle, you know, because I really believe that understanding is the booby prize. And in AA, which is what I do now, I'm retired. All I do is AA. I just love it. I've always loved it. And when I'm in that room Monday night at the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag where we're sober correctly, you know, I feel that connection. I feel the energy of that. And when I'm here with you, I can feel it through this screen. It's much better live, but when the Zoom thing happened, I'm able to tap into that. There you are. We're all right here. We're all in this together. I think this thing has given the world more access to Alcoholics Anonymous than it's ever had. It's not going away, nor should it. But the God that I feel close to, that I have faith or not faith, whatever it might be, it's everything. There's, like my guru buddy told me, he says, it's everything, Bill. It's not just other people. It's all of nature. It's everything. We can't possibly be separate, and we can't see that. And we're looking for a theology that will give us answers. I don't know that there are any. Even Richard Rohr, some of you might read Rohr. He's a Catholic priest. He talks about non-dual stuff. It's all of it. It's here right now, all of it, all the time, you know, and sometimes I can feel that. I've had meditation experiences where I feel connected. They're subtle, though. I've never had a big blazing kind of a thing. It's just very subtle, like a big, deep breath, like, oh, there you are. I was sitting out in my backyard one time. We got these big birch trees back here, and the wind was blowing really hard. And I was meditating. I opened my eyes and I looked at it, and what came out of me without even trying was, there you are. it still chokes me up. Sometimes you can see it. Sometimes you can see it.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Bill, for being with us this evening. Thank you, Lamb, for showing up to do the intro. What a beautiful evening. Michelle, back to you.